So good afternoon all. By today we are completing our forensic science certificate course, and today with us there is our principal, respected principal, Dr. Raghunathan sir. Sir, I am inviting you to speak a few words about our forensic science course.
Okay, Priyanka, thank you. So good afternoon to one and all. And first of all, I congratulate Srimati Priyanka, Assistant Professor of Sri Narayana Law College, for conducting 3 months certificate course on forensic science. I think you may be well aware about this importance of forensic science. All of you heard about this Evidence Act. Suppose if you want to submit evidence, a piece of material, oral or documentary evidence, it must be in accordance with the provisions of the Evidence Act. No court will accept any evidence if it is against the provisions of the Evidence Act. So all the evidence must be related to or must be in accordance to the provisions of the Evidence Act. That is mandatory. So you may think about this importance of forensic evidence. The evidence produced under the forensic science, that is considered one of the best evidence. It always overcomes the oral evidence, or it may be a documentary evidence. The entire evidence given as per the Evidence Act, only 2 types of evidence, that is oral evidence and documentary evidence. Documentary evidence may be primary or secondary. So if you want to analyze a death, whether it is a natural or unnatural, based upon the forensic records, science, or based upon this post-mortem report or report of the forensic science, it is very easy to find out that is natural or unnatural death. So what about the reasons, the cause of the death? That can be identified by using the forensic evidence. If it is due to a wound, the nature of the wound, then what about this? That is a very near relation, or it is a poisonous death, or any other real cause. We can easily identify a real cause of death through forensic evidences, forensic analysis. DNA test, that is one of the best tests to prove the paternity, the nature of the mother, father, or the children, etc., etc. A lot of forensic evidences. So that evidence, if it is supposed or based upon the forensic analysis, that is considered one of the best evidence. And I think this type of courses, you will not get information directly from any other sources. Forensic evidence that is produced by the oral evidence given by the forensic surgeon. As a practicing lawyer or as a law student, you must understand the meaning or the importance or the value of forensic evidence. These type of courses, certificate course or other type of seminars, webinars, will help you to understand more about the importance of forensic science and forensic evidence. So make use of these type of occasions, these type of courses. That will improve your quality, improve your knowledge on evidence, forensic evidence. So I think this course will help you to understand more about the importance of these areas. So I congratulate all these participants, and I hope you got a deep knowledge with respect to these forensic evidences. Once again, I congratulate all the participants, especially our coordinator, Srimati Priyanka Madam, our teacher in charge of this course. So thank you, and I wish all the success. Thank you very much. Thank you, Priyanka.
Thank you so much, sir, for your kind words. Thank you, sir. And here today we are having with us. Yes, sir.
Madam, Gita Madam.
Yes, sir. I can hear properly, sir. Thank you.
Yeah, your webinar is a fantastic one. Still, the students are talking about this webinar, that forensic evidence.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, madam.
For the nice words. Thank you for the nice words.
So today we are having respected Dr. Geeta Madam, and she will be delivering an excellent speech on medico-legal aspects of wound. For giving her a warm welcome, I'm inviting Ashwati Ramesh.
Thank you.
Very good afternoon, everyone. I hope I'm audible.
Yes,
Hello.
you are audible.
Yes, Ashwati.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Today we are coming to a formal conclusion of this 2 months long certificate course in forensic science. And I'm honored to be delivering the welcome address to today's valedictory session. With extreme pleasure, I welcome our presenter for the day, Dr. Geeta O, to this session. A learned academician and a qualified doctor, she has done MBBS, MD in forensic science, and MHE. She is a professor and head of forensic medicine at Sri Gokulam Medical College and Research Foundation, Thiruvananthapuram. She is the head of bioethics unit of Gokulam Medical College with consent to UNESCO. Today, she will be presenting a webinar on medico-legal aspects of wound. I welcome her to grace this occasion and widen our perspective of this subject. Welcome, ma'am.
Thank you, Ashwati.
Okay, ma'am. Now you can present.
First of all, let me thank Rekhanathan sir and Priyanka madam for giving me this opportunity, and a very warm good afternoon to all of you. I want to know about the participants. It's constituted
Ma'am,
by
there
law
are
students.
LLB students, advocates,
Yes.
then academicians also.
Okay. Okay. So majority are law students.
Yes, ma'am. Majority are lost.
Any other non-professional group? That means plus 2 students or
Yes,
something.
ma'am. Our criteria for this course had been +2.
Okay.
Qualification was +2. So there are students who are not professionals.
So that I can talk to that level also. That's why I was asking.
Okay, ma'am.
Thank you. Thank you. First of all, let me give you an introduction to today's topic. That is medico-legal aspects of injuries, or rather wounds. I'll go to the slides.
Okay.
Can you see the slide?
No, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
Okay. So
Yes.
I think the audio and video both are working properly.
Okay. We can see and hear you.
Okay, thank you. So this is medico-legal aspects of injuries, and for a law student, what is the need of knowing about injuries or wounds? That all of you know what is the importance of knowing about injuries. And before going to the subject proper, let me once more reiterate the heading or the title: medico-legal aspects of wounds are meant. Then comes the question, what is the difference between injuries and wounds? So when we first hear the term injuries, what comes to our mind is wound itself, that is bodily injuries. But much better than me, you all know that injuries, the term injury has got some other perspectives also. Like, sorry, like it is a harm caused to body, mind, reputation, or property. So more than a bodily injury, it includes something else also. But as far as we are concerned, our medical experts are concerned, injuries means bodily injury only. So we use the term injury synonymous with the wounds. That's all. As an introduction, I'll be showing this picture. I hope many of you must be aware of the story of this girl. At least some of you might have read about this girl and what is the story behind this particular girl. Story of this girl. So this is a case of vitriolage or throwing acid on the body of this girl by a man to disfigure her. So I showed this picture just to give you an impression that these are also chemicals.
Excuse me, ma'am. The
Yes.
slide, we cannot see the slide, the picture.
Named Lakshmi, who had been attacked with acid by a man to disfigure her. And I'm showing this picture just to make you aware that not only mechanical injuries like abrasions or contusions, chemicals can also cause injuries on the body. So here, this girl's face was hugely disfigured, and this is the picture after multiple surgeries and reconstruction of her face. And you can see how different she appears now due to acid attack. So it is also a type of injury called chemical injury. So in today's session, we will be dealing mainly with 5 conditions or 5 aspects. 1, different types of injuries we'll be dealing with. Then how are each injury produced? Then what are the medical legal implications? And what are the mechanisms that can lead on to death in such situations? And medical legal questions usually come forward in such situations. So first of all, let me tell you that injuries or wounds can be caused by mechanical force, then chemical force, thermal force, and physical agents like electricity, radiation, etc. So all these forces will be causing change in the body or dissolution in the continuity of the body tissues, resulting in a wound. So coming to the first one, mechanical injuries. Mechanical injuries means injuries caused by mechanical force. Mechanical force in the form of blunt injuries like hitting or falling onto the ground or throwing a stone on the body. These are all blunt forces, or sharp forces like using a knife or some other sharp object to inflict injury on the body. So mechanical injuries are caused by mechanical forces, which can be a blunt force or a sharp force. So we will be dealing with this mechanical injuries in detail after going through the other types of injuries. So mechanical injuries are of different types that we will deal with later on. So coming to the second group of injuries, as I've already mentioned, chemicals or like acids or alkalis can cause injuries on the body. Similarly, some plants like calotropis or some other irritant juice producing vegetables can also produce injuries on the body. So this picture is that of a person who is consumed acid, and this acid due to spilling over the face caused this corrosion around the mouth, around the nostril, and due to spilling downwards causing corrosion or burns, chemical burns on the front of neck. This is also a type of injury. Then comes thermal injuries. Thermal, as you all know, thermal indicates temperature. So the temperature, extreme form of temperature, that is a very high temperature and very low temperature can cause injury on the body. So if it is a very high temperature like a flame, it can cause burns in the body. And initially, if it is only for a very few seconds, then there will be, or over a very small area, then there will be only redness. Sometimes blisters appear, as you can see in the picture, and later on the blister may rupture and leaving the raw area there. And if it is a bit more, that is, heat is a little more and the contact between the body and the temperature is little more, then the area burnt will be more, the depth of burning will be more, and severe form of pain and other symptoms appear. And if the flame is on the retained there for a longer period of time, as in burning of the materials around that person, or due to fire the house as or that room itself, that can lead on to the sustenance of temperature for a longer period of time, and that will lead on to charring of the body. Charring of the body, you can see here a severely charred body. These are all unpleasant sights, and
Ma'am, slides are again not changing.
now is it changed?
Now we can see the picture of Lakshmi.
Only that one.
Second slide.
I will again quit and will come back.
Ma'am, if you could send. Okay. Okay, now injuries due to electricity.
Okay, now this is a picture showing injuries due to electricity. This is again a physical force, just like temperature. This is electricity causing injury on the body. So in the first picture, you can see the hand showing some whitish or creamy areas with some black dots here and there. And due to holding off a live wire, or coming in holding on to that or something like that. So this can be considered as an entry wound, and sometimes it will be very small, like a small oval lesion, and through that wound electricity passes through the body, and once it comes through heart or through the brain, then sudden death occurs. And since there is an entry of electricity, and in almost half of the cases there will be an exit wound also, electricity will pass out of the body. And here in the second picture, you can see on the under aspect of a foot a blackish or a charred area, which is the exit wound. Can you see the next slide? Lightning. Is it changed?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Yes, this is the picture showing lightning. Lightning is also a form of electricity coming suddenly over the body and passing over the body. It can also cause a typical appearance called a Lichtenberg flowers. It's a branching pattern. You can see typical appearance over the body, and this is a lightning injury. And coming to the first group, that is mechanical injuries, which are the commonest type of injuries we see. So the mechanical injuries are due to blunt force or due to sharp force. So blunt force injuries are abrasions, contusions, lacerated wounds, incised wounds, stab wounds, chop wounds, and fractures. And there is another group called firearm injuries, which can be considered as another type of force. It's also a mechanical injury, but the mechanism, everything is different for firearms. So it can be considered as another entity. So can the participants follow me? If you want to slow down my pace, I'll do that. Are the participants following the talk?
Yes, ma'am.
One of the participants, please give me the feedback.
Yes, ma'am, we can follow
Okay, if you have any doubt, you can keep it in your mind. At the end or in between, I'll give you a break so that you can ask questions. I have showed you almost 10 slides. Do you have any doubt regarding those slides? The first 9 or 10 slides I've shown. Any doubts we can clarify now.
Ma'am, the lightning wound, what was the name for it? What flower?
It is otherwise called a Lichtenberg flower. It's a technical term, L-I-T-C-H-E-N, Lichtenberg, B-E-R-G, Lichtenberg flowers. Otherwise called filigree burns. Because of that particular pattern, it is called filigree burns, F-I-L-I-G-R-E-E, filigree burns. It's not very commonly seen. There's an entity like that, but usually following lightning, burns may be seen, just like this, because of the passage of high voltage electricity through the body, and endogenous burns will be produced. And if metals are worn over the body, like mala, metal bracelets, all those things can get heated, and that can cause burns over the body. Sometimes due to the very high temperature, clothes may get lighted and or maybe in fire, and that can cause burns of the body. And this is typical lightning injury. Any other doubt?
No, ma'am.
Okay. Now we'll move on to the next slide. That is mechanical injuries. So here there are many mechanical injuries shown. Out of these, abrasions, contusions, lacerated wounds and fractures are caused by blunt force. The first three and the last one, fractures, are caused by blunt force. Like ബ്ലണ്ട് എന്ന് പറയുമ്പോൾ എല്ലാവർക്കും മനസ്സിലാവുമെന്ന് വിശ്വസിക്കുന്നു. അതായത് ഷാർപ്പ് അല്ലാത്ത ടൈപ്പ് ഫോഴ്സ്, അതായത് ഒരു വടി കൊണ്ടുള്ള തട്ട്, അല്ലെങ്കിൽ ഒരു കല്ല് കൊണ്ടുള്ള എറിയ, അല്ലെങ്കിൽ നമ്മുടെ താഴോട്ട് വീഴുന്ന കൊണ്ടുള്ള ഇഞ്ചുറീസ്. ഓൾ ദീസ് ക്യാൻ ബി കൺസിഡർഡ് ആസ് ബ്ലണ്ട് ഫോഴ്സസ്. വെൻ യു fall onto a floor or onto a stone, that is also a blunt force. And incise wounds, stab wounds, and chop wounds are sharp force injuries caused by a sharp weapon or a sharp object. So coming to the first type of injury called abrasions. Abrasions can be, they are superficial injuries. First thing to be remembered is abrasions are very superficial and involving only the superficial layers of the skin. Skin തന്നെ ഏറ്റവും സൂപ്പർഫിഷ്യൽ ആയിട്ടുള്ള ഒരു ടിഷ്യൂ ആണ്. അതിൽ തന്നെ സ്കിൻ ലെവലിൽ മാത്രം നിൽക്കുന്ന ഒരു ടൈപ്പ് ഇഞ്ചുറിയാണ് abrasions എന്ന് പറയുന്നത്. And the medical legal importance is that it heals without leaving a scar. We must be having this multiple abrasions of the body from childhood onwards, but they don't leave a scar because it's only superficial injury, and the epithelium will be coming back, regenerate, and will fill the gap, and a new epithelium or a new skin appear over that area. And among these abrasions, the mechanism that causes abrasions is frictional force between the body and a rough surface. That is the basic minimum requirement for producing an abrasion. So there should be a friction. Friction means a movement between two surfaces, between the body surface and a rough surface, can cause an abrasion. When you fall onto a rough object, your body is rubbing against that rough object like a stone or a floor, and that can cause an abrasion. Then among these abrasions, there are different types of abrasions. One is scratch. Scratch means a thin and a pointed object. When passed over the body surface, it will leave a linear abrasion. That can be considered as an abrasion, like thorn or the tip of a pin. When passed over the body, that will produce a line-like abrasion. That is called a scratch. And if the body is rubbing against a broad and rough surface, as in road traffic accident or bike accident, when the person falls onto the ground and the body rubs against the rough surface or when the body is dragged over a rough surface, there will be multiple lines over that area, as shown in this third picture. Multiple small lines or a long lines will be seen, and they are called graze abrasions. G-R-A-Z-E, graze abrasion. And this is just like without any particular name, this is another type of abrasion. And in the next picture, you can see in the neck region, you can see a linear brown mark. That is due to the compression of the neck with a ligature material. So abrasions can be due to a frictional force, or in this particular case, it is called a pressure abrasion. It is this may be a case of strangulation or a case of hanging. I think it's a case of strangulation because two lines are seen usually, which is quite unlikely in a case of hanging. So when a ligature material is applied over the neck with a force, with inward force or compression force, this type of abrasion called pressure abrasion is produced. And the next picture shows a particular pattern. This is called patterned abrasion, where the pattern of the tire is shown over the back of the body. So this is a picture. This is an injury which can give you an idea about the object that has caused that injury. So it is which shows the exact pattern of the object that has caused that injury. It is called a patterned abrasion. That will help to identify the vehicle if the vehicle is unknown. That is the medico-legal importance of it. And then comes the second type of blunt force injury called contusion. It is again caused by, if the force applied is a little more, the inner to the skin, there are multiple numerous blood vessels, small and large blood vessels are there, and if the blunt force is more to produce a rupture of the blood vessels inside, that can cause bleeding within the tissues or within the or inner to the skin. So there will be blood coming out of the blood vessels and getting collected. So you can see different types of contusions. They are not different types, but different colors because of aging. As the days go by, the color of the contusion changes from red to bluish or greenish. Then comes an yellowish and a brownish and an yellowish tinge, and lastly it will become yellowish and will get absorbed to the circulation, and will the pigments will gradually disappear. So anyway, almost all of you are aware of the pigment that gives color to blood, that is hemoglobin. So when blood comes out of the blood vessel, blood is outside, so body will consider it as a foreign material. Anything out of place will be considered as a foreign material or a waste, and that has to be disintegrated and should be removed from that site. So the body cells will act against that thing that is out of place, and blood will get disintegrated. Hemoglobin comes out, and hemoglobin undergoes some disintegration. Other pigments like hemosiderin, hemocyanin, and bilirubin appears. Bilirubin നമുക്കെല്ലാം കേട്ടിട്ടുള്ളതാണ് അല്ലെ, ജോണ്ടിസ് വരുമ്പോൾ ഇൻക്രീസ് ചെയ്യുന്ന ഒരു പിഗ്മെന്റ് ആണ് ബിലിറുബിൻ എന്ന് പറയുന്നത്. So it is due to the degradation of blood. So here also this yellow color is due to bilirubin, and gradually this bilirubin will be absorbed from the site to the circulation and will be removed and will completely come back to normal color. So in contusion also there is no scar left behind. Next comes another particular type of contusion. This is otherwise called tram line contusion. These three are of the same case, and this one another case, and they're a different type of picture, but they are the same. The mechanism producing this particular injury is the same in both the situations. Here you can see two lines in all these injuries. You can see, if you look closely, you can see two lines with a middle area of normal skin or normal color. Here also you can see two red lines with a middle area of normalcy. So this is due to contusion, or this is due to application of a blunt force using elongated and a pliable material like a cane or some lathi or a rod-like structure. So this is a case of torture where due to hitting with an elongated structure, a rod-like structure or a cane, they're producing this tram line contusion. If such an injury is seen having this particular pattern, we can very well say that the object that is caused is an elongated, a rod-like structure which is somewhat pliable, like a cane. And the third one is a lacerated wound. That is an irregular wound caused by blunt force, and on close examination you will be able to make out the irregularity of the edges of the wound and some tissues running from one side to the other on close examination. If you are in doubt, if the doctors are in doubt, then a magnifying lens can be used to qualify it as a lacerated wound. Then comes, so these are the four types of the three types of injuries caused by blunt force. The fourth one I'll show you, fractures. And that comes the sharp force injury. It's an incised wound. Incise or incisions are put using sharp objects. Like you can see the edges very cleanly cut, unlike this irregular edge. This incised wound has got a very clean cut edge, and the bleeding will be a bit more, because it is cleanly cut with a weapon, and the blood vessel some cleanly cut, and blood will come out very easily from that. So you can see in the last two pictures, we can see the incised wounds are multiple in number, and last one we qualify it as a hesitation mark, and which is an indication that the person might have inflicted that injury by her own or his own, otherwise called a suicidal attempt or a self-inflicted wound. So they are called hesitation marks because a person trying to harm himself or herself will have some hesitation in cutting in the initial part. So there will be some superficial injuries in the initial phase, and once they gather enough courage, then only the actual wound will be produced. So if there is an incised wound which cannot be differentiated as whether it is self-inflicted or whether it was inflicted by somebody else, this type of finding will help to differentiate it or fix it as a self-inflicted injury, or rather we can say that it is more in favor of a self-inflicted injury. Can be the other way also, like another person can also cause this, but it is more in favor of a self-inflicted type of injury. Then comes stab wounds, where the injury will be caused by a sharp cutting weapon, and it will be inflicted into the body by a stabbing action. That means a force thrusting into the body, an inward thrust is applied. So that kind of force is needed to produce a stab wound. And when we say it medically, we can very well say that to qualify a wound as a stab wound, the depth should be more than length or width of the wound. Then only we qualify it as a stab wound or a penetrating or a perforating wound. So, so at the time of measuring the wound, the length should be taken by opposing the edges of the wound. That is by bringing those two edges together by with our fingers, and then the length is taken. Then depth is taken, and the edges are examined whether both the edges are cleanly cut, both the ends, this end and the other ends are cleanly cut or not. So you can see in the first picture that both the ends are very sharp, and we call this a spindle-shaped injury, and it can be caused by a double-edged weapon. That means a weapon having both edges sharp, or very sharp tip and one edge sharp. Whereas you can see in the second picture, the appearance is a bit different. One end is sharply cut, the lower end is sharply cut, whereas the upper end is somewhat blunt or a line-like. That means it is a wedge-shaped wound, and it can be caused by a single-edged weapon. A weapon that we use in kitchen for cutting. Usually we use a single-edged weapon in our kitchen purposes. Like one edge will be very blunt and the other edge alone will be sharp. So such a weapon can cause this type of injury. And in the third picture, you can see that there is a spindle-shaped stab, maybe a stab wound. Only after knowing the depth, we can say that it is a stab wound. Otherwise, we have to call it a incised wound. So we assume that these wounds are having more depth, and we call them stab wounds. And in this particular stab wound, you can see a spindle-shaped wound, and on the left side, you can see a small crescentic mark, a C-shaped mark on the left end. And this is due to the hilt of the weapon, or at the junction between the handle and the blade, there may be a projecting area, and when the knife is thrust into the body, that projecting area will come and hit against this part, and that might have produced this impression. So on noting this particular pattern, we will get an idea about the type of weapon that might have caused this injury. So this will help a lot in identifying that weapon. There. So you can see features of a stabbing wound. Here also the same picture. And here you can see one end is cleanly cut and the other end is rounded. That will also help to identify the weapon as a single edge weapon. So this is how the edges are edges of the weapon are causing the ends. So this red area is suppose this red part is the wound, and the knife is entering into the body, and this the width of the weapon will be producing the length of the wound, and this blunt edge of the weapon, the upper blunt edge of the weapon, will be producing this rounded upper edge of the wound, and the sharp cutting end of the weapon will be producing a sharply cut lower end of the injury. And suppose this at the junction of this handle and this weapon, if there is a projecting area, if this black area of the handle is a bit more projecting, or some weapon will have a metal rim here, something like that if there, and if the whole of blade is within the body, if it is thrust a little more into the body, that projecting part will come and hit either at the upper edge, or if the projecting part is here, it will hit on this lower part and will produce an impression there. So we can identify that it is a weapon having a single edge and it is having this particular width. By measuring the length, we can correlate it with the width of the weapon. There is a formula, or there is a method of calculating that, and I'm not going into the detail of correlating the measurement of the injury and the weapon. And we can correlate to some extent, we can correlate that also, and whether it is a single edge weapon or double edge weapon, we can make out whether there is a peculiarity at this junction or any projecting part that can also be identified or correlated. And these are the type of injuries called defense wounds. Defense wounds are a particular type of injuries which are seen on the defending part. When a person comes and attack another person, the reflex action of the victim will be to defend that attack. Usually we defend by holding on to the weapon, or by showing our forearm region or the upper limb in front of our body, or by showing the back of hand. So these are the methods of defending. Naturally, these are the methods. So in this first injury, there are incised wounds on the back of hand, and in the second picture, you can see multiple injuries on the inner aspect of hand, on all the fingers or all the four fingers. So this may be due to holding on to the blade of the weapon at the time of attack. And in the third picture, you can see bluish discoloration on the back of hand, and this is a contusion. And when there is a blunt force attack, the person might have defended that with the back of his hand. So if such injuries are seen on the particular regions or on the back of forearm, so we can say that it is a defense wound. So that will help a bit in reconstruction of the incident. Then comes chop wounds. Chop wounds are the wounds just like this sharp force injuries, but the weapon will be heavier than a normal light cutting weapons like axe or sword. Sword എന്ന് പറയുന്നത് വാൾ, അല്ലെങ്കിൽ ആക്സ് എന്ന് പറയുന്നത് കോടാലി പോലത്തെ സാധനങ്ങൾ. അപ്പം അതിൽ the striking surface or the striking part of the weapon that's causing the injury is very heavy. So in addition to the sharp effect of that weapon like sword, its weight will also act on the body, and that will cause some blunt effect on the body. So the edges of the wound will be crushed or contused, and the underlying bone may get fractured. So even if it is a cut seen from outside, inward blunt effect of the heaviness of the weapon will cause some fracture or fragmentation like that. And lastly, fractures. Fractures are caused by blunt force. Fractures are the injuries caused to the bones. that is discontinuity of the bones. Then a peculiar type of the injury is bite marks, or that can be considered as an aberration, that can be considered as a contusion or as a laceration. So the teeth will be producing those injuries. So if it is a very light bite, that will produce only an impression. You might have seen small babies biting on the body of mother or father or someone else, and that will just produce an impression there. Sometimes there's slight redness only. If a person is intentionally biting another person with a considerable amount of force, that may produce some amount of aberration, and due to the pressure effect of the teeth, it can be qualified as a pressure aberration. And if the force is little more, and if there is some sucking effect also, with a great force, if the person is biting with intentionally, then there will be some amount of contusion in the middle of the bite mark also. And if it's very severe type of bite, even the skin and the underlying tissues may get torn. That can be considered as a lacerated type of wound. So that can also be there. So here you can see in the first picture, it's only a slight discoloration. It's just an impression produced, and it can be, the second one can be considered as an aberration, and in the third one there are aberrations or multiple teeth marks are there in a circular pattern or an oval pattern with some contusion in the middle portion. And in the fourth picture you can see blackish discoloration, somewhat deeper type of injury can be considered as tears produced by teeth. So it is possible to take impressions from the bite mark, and it is possible to identify the person. If there is it's a suspect person, then that person's impressions can be taken, dental impressions can be made, and that can be compared with the impressions or dental cast made from the bite mark site. Moreover, if saliva is available in the bite mark, that can be taken and can be examined. If epithelial cells are there, DNA typing can be done, all those things can be done. I'm just confining myself to the injury part. And there are different methods of investigating bite mark as well. Then coming to the next or a different kind of injuries, firearm injuries. Firearm injuries are mechanical injuries, but because of the difference in mechanism of producing injury and all, I've included it as another type of injury. So there are two types of firearms. One is shotguns, where this type of cartridges are used, where you can see within this cartridge, it is a longitudinally cut form of cartridge. This is the full cartridge, and you can see small pellets, lead pellets within, and gunpowder is there, and some other material to maintain the force, the pressure inside is there. So this type of cartridges are used in shotguns, and once fired, so this is the metal rim seen, and this is the metal rim, and on the back side of the metal rim or on the undersurface, you can see a small area where when firing is done, the pin will come and strike here, and the gunpowder seen inside will get ignited due to the force, and the huge amount of gas and flame will be produced within the cartridge, and with that great force, all the pellets will be coming out and hitting the person, hitting the target. So those pellets going out and hitting the person will produce injuries on the body. So if the person is standing very nearby, then the whole pellet will go as a single bolus and will produce a single entry wound, just like a bullet. If the person is, or the target is a bit more away from the firing site, then by traveling that distance, the pellets will start to disperse, and multiple small wounds are also produced around a main wound. If the distance is more than 2 or 4 meters, then the whole pellets will be dispersed completely, and each pellet will produce a single wound on the body. So that by noting down the pattern of injuries produced on the body of that person, we can make out the distance of firing. You can see the multiple injuries. The third picture shows multiple small wounds on the body. It may be a case fired or a firearm injury produced from a distance more than 4 meters. 2 to 4 meters. And this is the X-ray picture. You can see multiple pellets within the body, small white dots here and there within the muscle plane or tissue plane. You can see multiple small shots with it, pellets with it. And this first picture shows a blackish injury, blackish area, which is an injury, entry wound, entry of the bullet. And you can see another round area or a round shadow around that, that is due to the impression of the muzzle end or the front end of the barrel of the weapon. So from this particular appearance, we can say that the barrel end came in contact with the body, and that is considered as a contact shot. And here you can see there's an entrance wound, and around that you can see blackish discoloration that's due to gunpowder, which is unburnt, or some carbon particles around. Sometimes it produces due to the flame, it will produce some burns, and some peppering or tattooing or powdery particles will be seen around those wounds. And all these features, if present around a wound, we can very well say that it is an entrance wound, because it will not be produced around an exit wound. Then here you can see the skull bone showing a small round fracture. It is an entry wound, and this is a skull due to the autopsy. During autopsy, skull will be cut like this and removed. So you can see a round shadow here, round opening, that is the entrance wound. And inside the brain also you can see a blackish area. So we can track that wound. All these pictures are not of the same case, they are different cases, and you can see a brain injury here. And due to the passage of the bullet, all these injuries will be produced. So here you can see another wound where there's a contact shot, where you can see an X-shaped wound. It's otherwise called a stellate-shaped wound due to the contact with the skin. The gas and flame, everything will be going into the body. If it is not in contact, it will be expelled outwards. Whereas if the barrel is in touch with the body, it can produce a wound like this, because the whole gas will be, and flame will be, or mainly gas will be entering into the tissues, and there will be an outward bursting effect due to that. That will produce a stellate-shaped wound. And coming to region-wise injuries. Now we have completed different types of mechanical injuries. Blunt force injuries like abrasions. In Malayalam we call it urava. Contusions, otherwise called a chadava. Lacerated wound or open wounds with irregular edges. And fractures, they are discontinuity of bones. Then sharp force injuries like incised wounds or cleanly cut wounds, stab wounds due to thrusting in of a sharp force or a tip of an object, and chop wounds due to heavy sharp cutting weapons like axe or sword. And there are features by which we can identify that it was due to a heavy sharp cutting weapon. And some peculiar type of abrasions, abrasion, contusion, or laceration or mix-up called bite marks, and some examples of firearm injuries. Do we have any doubt to be cleared till this point? Participants, please.
No, ma'am, it's clear.
No questions. Okay. Now we move on to the next topic, that is region-wise injuries. One, head injury. Here, a blunt force or a sharp force, anything on the head, causing some disruption of the tissues of the head, scalp or the superficial layers of the head, or skull, or the content of skull like brain and its coverings, we call it a head injury. And the first picture shows some discoloration around the eye, and this is otherwise called a black eye, because it is can be caused by a direct hit over the face or over the eye, or it can be an indirect evidence that there is some contusion on the scalp region or head region, because in the head region, if there is a contusion or hematoma, then that can seep down through the tissues and get collected around the eyes. So it need not be an injury around the eye. Somewhere above the eye, in the head region, if there is an injury, that blood can come downwards and get collected around the eye. So as a medical personnel, person should be very much cautious if there is a black eye seen, because it may be an indication of a serious head injury. And this second picture shows internal findings that may be seen in a case of head injury, and the fractures of the skull may be produced, or there are three coverings over the brain. In between these coverings, blood can get collected. That is extradural hemorrhage or dura mater, pia mater, arachnoid mater. So underneath any of these coverings, blood may get collected. If the blood is getting collected between the skull and dura, we call it extradural hemorrhage. Below dura, we call it subdural hemorrhage. Below arachnoid layer, we call it subarachnoid hemorrhage. And if it is pia mater, it call it subpial hemorrhage, because it's we don't use that term subpial because it's very difficult to differentiate arachnoid and pia mater. So whenever we see a hemorrhage below arachnoid mater, they're very thin structures, very close, very tightly adherent together and seen over the surface of the brain very tightly. So whenever there is a bleed on the innermost layer, we call it subarachnoid hemorrhage. Then within the brain matter, hemorrhage can be occurred. That's called intracerebral hemorrhage. In the brain stem, or the most important part of the brain, where our respiratory center and our heart, the center which regulates the heartbeat and all these vital centers are on the back of the head, that is just above spinal cord. It is otherwise called midbrain, pons, and medulla oblongata. So all these areas are very vital, and even bleed can occur there if there is a hit on the back of head, or sometimes secondary to some other area injury. This can happen. So any of these hemorrhages can be fatal. So this is a picture of a skull showing fracture, linear fractures. This is a skull fracture which is almost round in shape, and you can see that it is somewhat depressed, and you can see a depressed area having almost a circular shape. And from this fracture we can make out that it can be caused by a localized blunt force, like an object having a round striking surface. So such injuries or such fractures on the skull will help us to identify the weapon or the object that might have caused that injury. And so such fractures are called signature fractures. So the object that has caused that injury leaves an impression or a signature of that object there. So that's why it's called a signature fracture. Then comes chest injuries. Chest injuries, any blunt force or sharp force can cause those injuries, and if there is a blunt force, it's severe in nature, it can cause fracture of the ribs, contusion of the lung, contusion of heart, like that. And blood can get collected in the chest cavity, respiratory difficulties arise, and death may occur. And inside the abdomen, the most important or the most commonly affected organ is liver, which is the biggest organ, internal organ. And this laceration, you can see, it can cause a severe bleeding into the abdominal cavity, and it can cause a death of the person. So likewise, the kidneys may get lacerated, intestine may get contused, or mesentery or the thin layer that is connecting the intestine may get torn, and severe bleeding may occur. Spleen may get lacerated. So any of the abdominal structures can get lacerated, or if it is a sharp force, they can get injured or cut. So the main mechanism that can lead on to death in such situations is bleeding in this case, and sometimes the person may collapse and die due to some force, like some shock, like neurogenic shock. Due to the severe pain at the time of infliction of that wound, the person may suddenly collapse and die. It's due to neurogenic shock. So coming to the other situations where, now we just gone through some regional injuries like head injury, different types of hemorrhages, and different types of injuries on the brain. Then about the chest injuries, abdominal injuries, then spinal injuries may occur, limb injuries, severe crushing of the limbs can also cause death of the person. Then comes the injuries associated with certain specific conditions. So we have mentioned about different mechanical injuries and region wise how it affects each region. And now coming to certain conditions where injuries may also be associated. So the main cause of death may be something else, like drowning. The cause of death may be drowning. So even then, some injuries may be associated with that condition. So one such thing as a road traffic accident, it is a condition which in which mainly injuries do occur. So the person walking on the street may hit by a vehicle, and a typical injury called bumper fracture or a primary impact injury will be seen on the leg region. If the vehicle is a bit more high, having a bit more height, like lorry or something like that, its bumper will be at a higher level and this person's pelvic region may be injured. So the person may fall onto the vehicle or may fall onto the ground, and again the vehicle may hit that person, or due to fall onto the vehicle may sustain certain injuries. So depending upon the behavior or the how the body moves after the first hit, multiple injuries may be produced on the body. Similarly, a person sitting inside the vehicle may also sustain certain specific type of injuries, like drivers may sustain certain type of injuries like fracture of forearm bones, because the driver may have an impending feeling of accident. The person may see the vehicle coming from the front for head-on collision. Just before head-on collision, the person may see a vehicle coming from the front, and that can lead on to an apprehension of hit against that vehicle, and that can lead on to tight holding of the steering wheel, and that can cause fracture of the forearm bones. Similarly, after hitting, the person may move forward due to inertia, and there will be severe flexion and hyperextension of the neck region, and the neck may get injured, otherwise called whiplash injury. Similarly, just like in drivers, the front seat occupant may also get a similar spinal cord injury. Then the person after hitting may move forward automatically or reflexly, automatically the person will move forward because of the reflex action, and his knees may hit against the front aspect of the vehicle within that vehicle. So his the knees may get fractured, or femur bone or the thigh bone may get fractured. Similarly, the front seat occupant may get spinal cord injury. The back seat occupants may be thrown out by the springing open of the door, or his or her head may hit against the front aspect of the back aspect of the front seat, or on the roof of the vehicle, or maybe some other part of the vehicle. So such injuries can occur in the back seat occupants. Similarly, in motorcyclists, if the person is not wearing helmet, head injuries, severe form of head injuries may occur. If the quality of the helmet is not very good, that can cause again fracture of the skull, otherwise called eggshelling, or the head may get fractured within the helmet. If a seat belt is worn, if it's not in a proper way, then sometimes due to compression, some abdominal injuries may occur. So these are some injuries seen in road traffic accidents. Then comes a fall from height. Fall from height can also cause certain specific type of injuries, like fracture. If the person is falling from a height, from the 4th floor of a building, the person may land on his feet, the person may land on his buttocks, the person may hit his head on the ground. So depending upon the part that is coming in contact with the ground first, will cause a certain type of injuries. A typical injury, as if the person is falling on his feet, there will be calcaneal fractures or heel fractures. Calcaneal bone will not get fractured in any other condition other than direct application of force there. If the person is falling onto his feet, there will be fracture of the heel bone. If the person is falling on his buttocks, then there will be fracture of the pelvis. Similarly, the force will be transmitted upwards through the spinal cord if the person lands on his pelvis or on his heels, and that will cause injury to the skull bone. Around the skull bone, there will be a round injury around the skull bone. Okay, then comes drowning cases. Drowning cases, the death may be due to actual drowning, entry of water into the air passage, but it can multiple other injuries may be seen due to fall. If the person is falling onto the well, sometimes on the side walls the head may hit, or some other body part may hit, or on the bottom of the well or on the pond there may be stones, and that can cause injuries on the body. Sometimes intentionally caused injuries on the body, making the person unconscious, that may also be seen. So injuries seen in drowning cases should be arouse suspicion, and should be differentiated whether it is due to fall or due to some other intentional infliction of force. And it's a very difficult situation to differentiate these two situations. In poisoning cases, usually there are no injuries. There's no need for producing any injuries if the person is intentionally or by his or her own taking that poison. There may not be any injuries at all. But if another person is forcibly administering that poison to this person, there will be force applied around the mouth or around the face, and that can lead on to injuries around the mouth and nostrils. Hanging cases, it's due to compression of the neck, and that kind of injury is called pressure abrasion due to ligature material. And I have shown that picture initially. And strangulation, somebody else applying some ligature material around the neck, or the first picture and the third picture, they are due to manual strangulation. And the third picture, it appears to be that of a manual strangulation. Somebody might have applied his hand for producing this injuries. So small contusions and abrasions are seen on the neck, front of neck here. And in the first picture, you can see a linear or a band-like abrasion. And this is again should be confirmed only after dissecting the inner structures. And by that, we can make out whether it is a case of hanging or strangulation. In hanging, the internal injuries are very minimal. A typical pressure abrasion is seen, which is oblique in nature, whereas in strangulation, it will be almost horizontal or multiple in nature. If somebody applied hands, that is called a manual strangulation or throttling, multiple small discrete wounds are seen. And on internal examination, fracture of the inner structures are seen. And smothering is another condition where some injuries are seen around the mouth. It is here, smothering means applying force around the mouth and nose using a small soft material or using hand. So because of this blunt force with hand or some material like this pillow or some soft material, then multiple injuries will be seen on the inner aspect of lip. You can see teeth here, and the lips are contused, bluish and reddish in color. So injuries will be seen around mouth and nostrils. Then in sexual assault cases also injuries are seen, like genital injuries will be seen, and other injuries due to forcible application or following application of force. Multiple injuries may be seen here and there on the body due to restraining. Multiple contusions may be seen on the forearm region, or some other blunt injuries may be seen. And in homicides, a killing of a person by applying some kind of force, depending upon the type of force applied, like incise wounds or stab wounds, whatever it may be, injuries may be seen. And in natural diseases, sometimes injuries are seen. These are all combinations. Drowning plus injuries. Fall from height, purely injuries would be seen. Natural diseases, again, injuries due to fall will be there. in addition to natural disease. The person may suddenly develop some chest pain, and person may fall from a particular place because the person is suddenly become unconscious, and due to that some injuries may occur. So sometimes combination of two conditions may be there, or one condition plus some injuries may be there. So it is always better to examine the person thoroughly and completely, especially at the time of doing autopsy, so that even if there is a particular cause of death, the body should be thoroughly examined for any associated injury, so that the picture of the case may change as a whole if you see some other additional finding in the body. Coming to the medico-legal aspects of injuries, the next portion, medico-legal aspects of injuries. The injuries may be grouped as simple injuries, where that's not capable of causing death, and grievous injuries. The grievous injuries, legally, you may be knowing much better than me. It's dealt with in section 320 of IPC, and there are 8 clauses under this grievous hurt. And any of this, like permanent privation of sight of either eye, permanent privation of hearing of either ear, any fracture or dislocation, any fracture, dislocation of teeth, bones, then a permanent privation of any member or joint, or any condition that may make a person incapacitated, or making the person in severe pain for a period of 20 days will be grouped as grievous hurt. So legally it has got significance, because the punishment for causing grievous hurt, using a dangerous weapon or not using dangerous weapon, it's different. So to qualify a wound as grievous hurt or a simple wound is important. And I think it is the judiciary that decides whether it is grievous or hurt or not. But the doctors or medical personnel will be asked whether it is simple or fatal. So fatal injuries are can be grouped into 3 different types of fatal injuries. Fatal means the injury ending in a fatal event. So the injuries, depending upon the gravity of the injury, we can qualify, or the fatality of the injury, we can qualify them, or we can group them under 3 headings. 1, necessarily fatal injuries, where death is the only possible outcome. There is no possibility of survival at all. It is the extreme form of injury, like decapitation, that is head and trunk are separated, as in railway accidents, like that. Or severe crushing of the head with a complete crushing of brain matter. There is no possibility of survival at all. Such injuries, extreme form of injuries, are called necessarily fatal injuries. And second group is sufficient in the ordinary course of nature to cause death. So those injuries are the injuries where death is more probable than survival. Death is more probable than survival. If the person is left to take the course of nature, we are not considering the result, if provided he was given the perfect type of treatment or anything like that. So not at all considering the treatment and the result of the treatment. If the person is left to take the course of nature, what will be the end result? Suppose a stab injury involving the heart, puncturing into the left side of heart. So even a lay person know that a person with a penetrating injury to the heart will die, irrespective of the type, or not considering the treatment given. So such injuries are called sufficient in the ordinary course of nature to cause death, like stab injury heart, stab injury entering into the chest cavity due to bleeding, person may die. Laceration of liver, person may die due to bleeding. Then severe crushing injury of the lower limb, person may die. So in such situations, severe head injury or fracture of skull, the person may die. Here, death is more probable than survival. And the third group is the minor type of injury, where the survival is more probable than death. Death may also occur due to some complications or in certain special situations, but survival is more probable. Example, a fracture of both bones of forearm, hand, forearm, upper limb. So we don't expect a death in such a situation. The person may develop some deformity or some other pain or some bleeding around that wound, but we don't expect a death in such situations. But due to complications like embolism or due to severe infection or thrombosis, person may die also. But even in that situation, we expect a survival in such cases. They are called injuries which are likely to cause death. So the second group, sufficient in the ordinary course of nature to cause death, if present on a person, we will include that as the cause of death. If more than one injury is there, like head injury and laceration liver is there, we have to combine those injuries, or we have to give equal weightage in the as a cause of death. In those two conditions should be equally considered while giving opinion as to the cause of death. Considering the mechanisms of death, or what are the physiological changes taking place in the body after sustaining an injury, one and foremost one is bleeding. If more than 1/3 of the blood is lost from the body acutely or suddenly, death will occur following shock. If there is severe pain sustained, that can cause neurogenic shock and death of the person. If a large blood vessel is cut, air may be sucked into the body, causing air embolism and sudden death of the person. And if there is a vital organ severely damaged, like heart is punctured and heart can't pump properly, then also it can cause the death of the person. So these are the immediate causes, like neurogenic shock due to severe pain, severe loss of blood leading to bleeding shock, third one air embolism, and fourth one a vital organ getting damaged. Sometimes the person may die after 3 days or 4 days or after 10 days. There are certain conditions causing these delayed deaths. One and the foremost one is infection. Infection can spread over the localized area. It can spread all over the body, called septicemia, and the whole body organs may fail and the person may die. That is septicemia. Then embolism, thromboembolism, then bone marrow embolism, fat embolism. All these emboli means small solid particles forming. Thrombus means a clot forming within the blood vessel, and that can get dislodged and can block the blood vessels, and that may occur. Then hepatic failure, liver failure may occur, kidney failure may occur. So these are all delayed causes of death, not immediately within a week or after that. So bleeding can also occur later because of the infection. A blood vessel may erode, and bleeding can occur later on. Secondary hemorrhage, we call it. So these are the different physiological mechanisms acting due to injuries. So sometimes when we go to courts, sometimes the mechanism is also asked. Then what are the medico-legal questions that usually come into picture? One, whether the injury is simple or grievous, whether the injury is ante-mortem or post-mortem, that is, whether these injuries are inflicted after death of the person on a dead body. So by examining the injuries and the features, we can make out whether it is ante-mortem or post-mortem, because during a live state, there will be certain changes other than a post-mortem wound. There will be bleeding around that wound, which will be absent in post-mortem wound. Just a dead body. There is no vital reaction, no circulation. So there won't be any bleeding around that. And in ante-mortem wound, the redness will be there. In post-mortem wounds, it will be pale and whitish and no edema, no gaping like that. So there are certain features by which we can make out that. And what caused death? So if there is an injury which is sufficient in the ordinary course of nature or necessarily fatal, we have to include that. And if more than one injuries are there, we have to give equal weightage in the opinion while drafting the opinion as to the cause of death. Is volitional activity possible after sustaining an injury? So sometimes after sustaining a stab injury heart, or stab injury of abdomen, person might have walked for a distance of about 100 meters. He might have taken an auto, and he might have traveled a distance of about 1 kilometer. So sometimes the question will be, is it possible for a person to do all these volitional activity after sustaining that injury? It is possible. Sometimes a person, after getting a stab wound, the person may suddenly collapse and die due to neurogenic shock. Whereas in some other person, the person may survive for half an hour or 1 hour or 2 hours or 3 hours. So each individual is different, and the body reaction to each activity or body reaction to force may be different in each individual. So we can't say that this person, how long a person will survive after a stab injury. There is no study like that. So how long is survival possible? Same answer. Then the another medical legal question is weapon identification. It is possible, as I have described earlier, from the pattern of the object, we can make out the weapon. A similar weapon can cause that injury. That is the only thing we can say. We don't say that this is the weapon that has caused injury. When a weapon is shown by the investigating officer to the doctors, they'll correlate the weapon with the injury. Sometimes if pattern is there, very rarely only there will be typical pattern. If pattern is there, we can identify. From the measurements, we can correlate the weapon, and we can say that a weapon having similar measurements can cause this injury. Then comes another medical legal aspect is writing wound certificates. When a person comes to the casualty with some injury for treatment, then the doctor will write a certificate or a medical legal certificate called wound certificate, where the details of the injuries would be there, and that would be sent. So since the person who is seeing that injury first is the person who is sitting in the casualty, that document has got real value, and it is the first-hand information. So there will be some history written there, and the injuries will be noted down, like measurement of the injury, type of injury, the location of the injury. There is a particular pattern in which wound has to be described, like abrasion, 3 into 2 centimeter on the front of right forearm, 2 centimeter below the tip of shoulder, like that. Or a contusion, 5 into 3 centimeter into 2 centimeter. In a wound certificate in the casualty, we won't write depth, because it's not possible. In autopsy, it is not possible to ascertain the depth in a casualty. So the contusion, 3 into 2 centimeter on the front of right side of chest, 2 centimeter below clavicle, and 5 centimeter outer to midline. So this is the way in which it would be described. The measurement will be there. What type of injury? Contusion, measurement, the front of chest, that is the location, and there will be 2 landmarks written, that is 2 cm below clavicle and 4 cm outer to midline. So by writing or describing an injury in this manner, a person reading that injury will get an exact idea about that injury. Where is it? From landmark points, what is the distance, and the type of injury. So this is the ideal way of writing a wound certificate. So this is a very important medical legal certificate. A person coming to casualty with injury will be having a wound certificate written, and it will be sent to the nearest police station. And in certain other situations, the investigating officer sometimes bring a person for wound certificate. That is a rare entity, but in forensic medicine and in casualty, sometimes a person may be brought by the police for expert opinion regarding an injury. Maybe he may be a person accused in a case of homicide or some sexual assault. During that attack, the victim might have inflicted some injury on the body of the accused person, and the police may have a doubt regarding the age of the injury. What could be the or when might have this injury occurred? Our incident might correlate what might have caused that injury, like that. So that is also called a wound certificate, and these are the 2 situations where wound certificates are written. So today we have discussed about the type of injuries, different types of injuries, mechanical injury, chemical injuries, thermal injuries, injuries due to physical agents like electrocution and lightning, and there are radiation injuries also that I haven't mentioned because it's very rare. Then coming to mechanical injuries, blunt force causing abrasion, contusion, lacerations and fractures, and incised wounds, stab wounds and chop wounds due to sharp forces. Then we discussed about region-wise injuries. Head may sustain injuries, neck may sustain injuries, chest, abdomen, limbs may sustain injuries. And in certain situations where injuries are produced, as in drowning, sometimes injuries may be there associated with that. In poisoning cases, in hanging, in strangulation, fall from height, road traffic accidents like that, and some medico-legal questions that would be asked, and some mechanisms that can lead on to death in due to wounds. So I think I have covered, or I have just touched almost all the points related to injuries, and each of this aspect can be dealt with in detail. But I think it is not needed for you in that much detail. That's why I just mentioned all those things. If you have any doubts regarding any of these points, I'll clarify.
Madam, all this. Hi. Hello.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Madam, all this investigation is based on the probability, correct, no? So to what extent one can rely on this kind of investigation, or can consider as an evidence?
You mean autopsy findings?
Yeah, autopsy or any other forensic finding where it's based on probabilities. Now, which weapon has been used? Now there can be same kind of different weapons.
Yes, yes, of course. That is why I stress that we don't say that this is the weapon that has caused injury. We never say that. We say that a weapon having similar features and similar dimensions can cause that injury. So it is the duty of the investigating officer to find out which weapon, or to recover that weapon is the duty of the investigating officer. We can't say that this is the weapon that has caused that injury. That would be ascertained after many other examinations like fingerprints or other stains on the body, stains on that weapon, like that.
Can you share your experience where it was very difficult to find out what may be the cause of the death, what may be, from your practical experience, do you have faced sometimes some kind of problem? So, okay, it become very difficult to, point it out, okay, what can be the cause of death?
Yes, there are. It is an accepted thing that almost 0.5% of cases, or to 1%, 0.5 to be very precise, cases, there won't be any cause of death found. That is called a negative autopsy. Everything, all the physical examinations, all the biochemical examinations, or all the chemical examinations, histopathological examinations will come out to be a negative. So that is called negative autopsy, and it is an accepted thing. And I think I have got 12 years of experience in Government Medical College, and I have done quite a good number of cases. And I think during my tenure, I have done one or two cases of negative autopsy. Since it was not very sensational or was not very suspicious, there was no problem at all. And even so, in such situations, it's an accepted thing. So we need not be panicky if there is no cause of death like that. We have to, the negative findings will also give some negative findings also have some importance. If there is no injury on the body, if there is no evidence of poisoning on the body, and if there is no evidence of natural disease, so many aspects will be ruled out. And we say that even after all these examinations, there's no finding as that can be attributed to as the cause of death. So that would be given as such. And instead of giving some dogmatic opinion, I think it is always better to give a negative opinion. And from the circumstantial evidences and other investigations, they may be able to come to a conclusion.
And is it possible after your examination or first-hand examination, we go for second opinion also, okay, whether the first opinion given is correct or not?
Yes.
Whether that happens,
I think it usually happens. The person who is given the first opinion may not know about such things happening in the background. So if there is the lawyers may go for second opinion, of course. Just like in medical conditions, persons consult one doctor, and then they go to a second doctor for a second opinion. So similarly, this may also happen. I think nowadays many medical legal experts are there, and of course it is a possibility.
Okay, thank you, madam.
Thank you so much, sir.
Ma'am.
Yes.
Can the profession of the person be identified from the injury?
Profession of the person. In some of the situations, it is possible. Some of the situations, like a person climbing on the coconut tree, they use something called this chummada, something like that. They tie some ligature around their feet. കണ്ടിട്ടുണ്ടോ? കാലിൽ കെട്ടിയിട്ടാണ് അവര് ചാടി ചാടി കയറുന്നത് പണ്ട് കാലത്ത്. ചുമ്മാട് ക്ലാപ്പ് എന്ന് പറയുന്ന സാധനം. അപ്പൊ അത് ബിക്കോസ് ഓഫ് ദ കോൺസ്റ്റന്റ് യൂസ് ഓഫ് ദാറ്റ് മെറ്റീരിയൽ ദർ വിൽ ബി സം കലോസിറ്റി ഓവർ ദ ഫീറ്റ്. അത് വേറെ ആരിലും കാണുന്ന പോലത്തെ അല്ല. ഒരു തിക്കനിങ് ആൻഡ് ഹൈപ്പർട്രോഫി ഓഫ് ദ സ്കിൻ ഓവർ ദാറ്റ് ഏരിയ. സോ അതുപോലെ തന്നെ കോബ്ലേഴ്സ്, അങ്ങനത്തെ ആളുകളിലെ ചില ഫീച്ചേഴ്സ് ഉണ്ടാവും. അപ്പൊ ചില പ്രൊഫഷനുമായിട്ട് റിലേറ്റഡ് ആയിട്ടുള്ള ചില ഫീച്ചേഴ്സ് ഉണ്ടാകാറുണ്ട്.
മാം, ഞാൻ ചോദിച്ചതല്ല, ഇപ്പൊ ഒരു ഡോക്ടറാണ് ഇത് ഒരു ഇഞ്ചുറിക്ക് ക്രിയേറ്റ് ചെയ്യണമെങ്കിൽ, അപ്പൊ ഡോക്ടർ ഇത് ക്രിയേറ്റ് ചെയ്യുന്ന ഇഞ്ചുറിക്ക് ഒരു പെക്യുലാരിറ്റി ഉണ്ടാവൂലേ?
ആ ബോഡിയിൽ ഇഞ്ചുറി ഉണ്ടാക്കിയത് വേറൊരാളാണെങ്കിൽ ആളുടെ പ്രൊഫഷൻ ആണ് പറയുന്നത്. യു മീൻ ദ അക്യൂസ്ഡ് പേഴ്സൺസ് പ്രൊഫഷൻ? Okay. Accused person's profession, sometimes it may be there. And about 5 or 10 years back, there was a case where a doctor by profession, she killed her husband and dismembered all the body parts, packed in a bag and thrown into water or river or something like that. There was a case like that.
Different places, no? She deposited in different places around that area.
Yes. As in such a situation, if doctors are doing that, they are very much aware of the anatomical peculiarities, and they will be knowing how to cut properly or easily, and they will cut through the joints only rather than cutting through bones. It's very easy to cut through joints. So if a person having some anatomical knowledge will be doing it in a different way. From that, it can be identified. Or a person having knowledge about chemicals may try to use the chemicals for harming a person. A chemist or a medical professional may use some drugs for doing that. From that, we can find out. But for all these things, we should have a proper history or the background of the accused person. Then we can correlate this one. And without that, we can't directly say that this is caused by this doctor, or this is caused by a chemist, or this is caused by such a professional. That is not possible. But if there is a history like that, we can correlate those things.
So it is based on the nature of the injury or the weapon used?
Nature of the
ഇഞ്ചുറി ഓർ ദി വെപ്പൺ യൂസ്ഡ്. ഇപ്പൊ ഒരു സർജിക്കൽ നൈഫ് വെച്ചിട്ടാണ് കട്ട് ചെയ്തിട്ടുണ്ടെങ്കിൽ നമുക്ക് അത് മനസ്സിലാക്കാൻ പറ്റുമല്ലോ.
സർജിക്കൽ നൈഫ് വെച്ചിട്ടാണെങ്കിൽ ആൾക്ക് കുറച്ചും കൂടി ആക്സസ് ഉണ്ടല്ലോ സർജിക്കൽ നൈഫിന്. അപ്പോൾ സർജിക്കൽ നൈഫ് ആണോ യൂസ് ചെയ്തതെന്നുള്ളത് കണ്ടുപിടിച്ചിട്ട് പറയാൻ പറ്റും.
Okay.
So now be careful before marrying to a doctor, huh?
It is a risk for all the professionals, not only doctors.
Yeah, but doctors is they know each and every part of the body in and out, so it's Okay, thank you, madam.
Thank you. Any other questions?
മാം, വേറൊരു ഡൗട്ടും ഉണ്ട്.
Yes.
മാം, ഒരു ആംബിഡെക്സ്ട്രസ് ആയിട്ടുള്ള ഒരു പേഴ്സൺ ഒരു ഇഞ്ചുറി ക്രിയേറ്റ് ചെയ്ത് തന്നെ അത് മനസ്സിലാക്കാൻ പറ്റുമോ?
You mean a person who is capable of using both hands in the same way?
Yeah.
Okay. The handedness or right-handedness or left-handedness is not a very easy way to identify an injury, or from the features of an injury, it is very difficult to identify the right-handedness or left-handedness of the person. But the location of that injury, we commonly say that a person, a right-handed person, will self-inflict an injury in a particular way. But if the person is inflicting that injury on another person, depending upon the relative position of the victim and the accused, the site of injury may differ. So we can reconstruct the incident after knowing that this person is having both-handedness or a left-handed person. The rare situation. So only after knowing that we can reconstruct that one. Otherwise, if the person is having equal capability for both the hands, it's very difficult to identify because the injuries will have the same features.
Okay. Okay, ma'am.
Is there any more doubts? Do anybody have doubts? No.
Madam, as of now, there is no doubt, but it may come, tomorrow, day after tomorrow, then.
Okay. If you have any doubts, you can message it and I will
Yes, madam.
give the questions or queries to Geeta, madam.
Sure, madam.
So that
You're most welcome. You can ask any of these medical legal doubts to me.
So I think nobody is having any doubts. Okay, then Geeta madam, thank you so much for sparing your valuable time for us. It was an excellent resource, and I strongly believe that all of our students will be benefited by this resource, by this lecture. And I invite Ashwati to cast a vote of thanks to Geeta madam. Thank you, madam, for your valuable presentation. Thank you, ma'am. Ashwati?
Yes, ma'am. Good evening, everyone. Honorable Presenter Dr. Geeta ma'am, respected Principal Professor Dr. Raghunathan sir, Vice Principal Sindhu ma'am, Course Coordinator Priyanka ma'am, and all the participants. It's my privilege to have been asked to propose a vote of thanks on this occasion. I, on the behalf of Srinarayana Law College, all the teachers, participants, and on my own behalf, extend a very hearty vote of thanks to our most valued Chief Guest, Dr. Geeta O, for sparing time from her busy schedule and enlightening us with her immense knowledge of the subject. Thank you so much, ma'am.
Thank you.
Organizing and conducting this course smoothly wouldn't have been possible without the support and supervision of our respected principal, Professor Dr. Raghunathan sir. I express my heartfelt gratitude to him for always being there for us. Thank you, sir. Another source of constant support and encouragement is our beloved Vice Principal, Sindhu ma'am. I extend my sincere thanks to you, ma'am. Thank you so much. And next comes the person without whom this course wouldn't have been possible, our course coordinator, Priyanka ma'am. Thank you for imparting us with such vast knowledge, and thank you for being the wind beneath our wings. None of this wouldn't have been possible without you, ma'am. A very big thank you to you. Last but not the least, I would like to thank all the participants who joined us and made this program a huge success. Thanks to each and every one of you. Once again, thank you all.
We thank Raghunathan sir and Priyanka madam once again, and I thank all the participants for the patient hearing, and they are always welcome to for any of the questions, and within my limited knowledge I'll give you the answers, and if I'm not capable of giving answers, I'll research and I'll give the answers if possible. And I wish all the participants a very good future. Thank you so much.